recorded acoustic guitar for lots of different people, for lots of different reasons. The recordings have been used on TV, radio jingles, in songs. I've never had an acoustic guitar part sent back to me because it didn't sound any good. So I figured I must be doing something right, and I've had to think about what I do, and I've put it all together to share with you in this video. Here's a photo of my studio, or rather my loft, where I did my first recordings, just to prove that you don't need a fancy looking studio to get a good sound. I've identified 4 elements to getting a good acoustic guitar sound, and I've ordered them in what I think is the order of importance and where you're best investing your time, effort and money to get the best sound. I've done this infographic to illustrate this. Now I'm going to call this Tom's Investment Triangle, or for short it's... oh, hang on, I can't call it that. This is called Tom's Investment Pyramid. Let's start at the top end, the small pointy bit. Now I've labelled that FX, mainly because FX fitted in that small space, but this is to do with the processing of the recorded guitar once you've finished all the other 3 stages. Now I've decided on this being the least important of the 4 elements, not because it isn't important, because it's absolutely vital. But if you get the other 3 elements correct, this part should be relatively easy. I thought the best way to demonstrate the processing would be to record 2 different guitar parts. One, something that would be used as a solo guitar part, and another guitar part, a kind of strummy part that you'd fit within a track. I've lined up the same guitar part 4 times and I've divided them up so we can listen to them in sequence. The first one is completely dry, I haven't done any processing on that. The second one I've used a Cubase track preset. The third one I've used EZMix, which is a third-party Project Studio level plugin. And on the last channel I've used my UAD plugins, which are kind of industry standard, quite expensive plugins. They're all doing a similar thing. They're all putting a little bit of reverb on. They're all applying some EQ, some compression and a little bit of harmonic distortion. So the Cubase channel, a bit of tube saturation, the EQ, then a vintage compressor. EZMix, it's a bit more difficult to tell what this one's doing as it's all preset based, but if you look at the little graphic here, so it's putting on a compressor, some EQ, reverb, and I think this is a kind of harmonic distortion unit. And lastly, on the UAD channel I've put these on manually and separately. So this first one is a Neve 1073 channel. I probably initially started with a preset, which I tend to do. It seems a bit pointless trying to reinvent the wheel because somebody's already spent time getting these presets good, so I normally start with the preset and then tweak it. So that's applying some EQ, maybe by driving the preamp it might be adding a little bit of harmonic distortion. I then put it through a tape emulator, which again adds a little bit of harmonic distortion, warms it up a little bit. Thirdly, this is a real industry standard. This is a software version of the LA2 compressor. So it's compressing the signal slightly. And then finally I wouldn't normally put this on the channel, but for these purposes it made it easier. I've put a plate reverb on. This is the EMT 140. So if we have a listen to them all, so it starts with the Unprocessed, then the Cubase presets, then the EZMix presets, then the UAD. I think it's possible to hear the difference there. Now they're not all doing exactly the same thing and you could probably get them to sound more similar to each other, but I think you can hear that the more expensive plugins do give you more clarity, but with the more expensive plugins you need to have more knowledge. Although I've said this is the least important of all the elements, it's probably actually the most complicated. Moving on to the strummed acoustic guitar part. Now a strummed acoustic guitar within a track needs to be treated differently to a solo acoustic guitar part. Let me just play it within the track here. Now this is being processed in the same way as the picked guitar part previously using the UAD plugins. Now that's kind of dominating the mix. All those mid frequencies in the acoustic guitar are interfering with the piano and the electric guitar, and we don't really need those. Also, the accents that I'm putting in as I'm strumming are coming out, and you probably don't need that, maybe sometimes, but you want it to be quite even. So the two things we need to do to process this is we need to take out a lot of the bottom end and we need to compress it a bit more. Now often these changes you make on parts that are within tracks, it can make them sound a bit nasty on their own, but they normally sound good within the track. So this is what I do. I'd take all the bottom end off, so let's hear what that sounds like. Then maybe add a bit of top end. And then to get rid of those peaks, make it a bit more even, let's add a little bit more compression. I'm using this compressor, so I'd add more compression by turning up this one. And then bring this back up to get the level back up. Now hopefully we're fine when we put it in the track, it sits better. But as I've stated that this is the least important of all the elements, not that it's not crucial, and probably the most difficult to get right. What I'm meaning is you don't have to have these expensive plugins to make it work. So I'm going to try and prove that by using the built-in plugins in Cubase. So the first Cubase one I put on this Studio EQ. So let's take some of that bottom end out. And then with the compressor, let's bring the ratio up to 3:1. See the difference by bypassing it. So it's bringing up the quieter parts and squashing the louder parts, making it more even. So let's put it back in the track. I think actually I've probably got a better result using the Cubase plugins there. My point being that you don't need expensive plugins to get a good acoustic guitar sound. The second most important element I've identified is the microphone and where you put it. I don't have a very expensive studio microphone. I can't really justify it as I don't have a really acoustically well treated room. I have recorded through these microphones and they do sound fantastic, but they cost 5 times the amount of microphone that I've got, and I'm not sure they sound 5 times better. Everything being considered, there's no reason why you still can't get a good acoustic guitar sound using a reasonably priced microphone. As long as you get all the other steps correct, you should still get a good result. Probably even more important than how good your microphone is where you put it. So I'm going to demonstrate using 2 different microphones. I'm going to use my studio mic that I use for everything, which is an Audio Technica 4033, I think. And I'm going to use a cheap SM58 copy so you can hear the difference. I'll also record the guitar, placing the microphone in different places to show you how much difference that makes. All I've got on here is a little bit of compression. I've turned everything else off. So the first one, this is with the mic in the correct place. When it gets to here, you can see it's peaked and distorted because I didn't turn it down, I just moved the microphone closer, but you can hear how the sound differs, how you get all this boomy bottom end. It's with the microphone right close to the sound hole. And the third one is with the microphone further away. So you can hear the difference here, how much difference it makes putting the mic in the correct place. Here we go. So the first example here, I'm pointing the microphone at the 12th fret. That's where I finally get the best and most even sound. The second one's too close to the sound hole, and the third one's just too far away from the guitar at all. This is what the 2 different microphones sound like. The first one is the large diaphragm studio mic. The second one is the cheap SM58 copy. Here there's more definition in the more expensive microphone, the large diaphragm studio mic, but the cheap SM58 doesn't sound bad, and I'm sure probably with a little bit of EQ that would be a perfectly acceptable guitar sound. The second most important element is the guitar. Now, you might have been thinking this would have been the most important element, but you've got to wait for that one. To demonstrate how much difference the guitar makes, I'm going to record the same thing using my, I don't know what these cost. This is a Martin HD28. I think these are about £2,500 now, I'm not sure. But this is a well played in one. I bought this new about 20 years ago. And I'm also going to use a cheap Yamaha £100 guitar. So even if you don't have a £2,500 Martin, there's lots of things you can do to the guitar or with the guitar before you start recording to ensure you get the best results. The most important thing on the guitar is the strings. So you want to make sure you've got some reasonably new, decent strings, unless you're going for a dead string sound. But if you want a nice clear sounding guitar, you want to put on some new strings. For two reasons: it's a clearer tone. Secondly, the strings go out of tune with themselves when they get a bit old. Also, you want to check before you start recording that there's no unusual buzzes or rattles on the guitar. Okay, so here's the recording with the two different guitars. So comparing the two different guitars, this is just with compression again. So let's hear what it sounds like with all of processing on. I think the Martin sounds sweeter. There's a harshness to the Yamaha, but I still don't think in a track whether the Yamaha would sound bad. I think you could probably make that work if you were to adjust the EQ for each guitar. So again, I don't think it's something that can stop you getting a good acoustic guitar sound. Now the last and most important element, which I'm sure you've been wondering what that is, but drum roll please, is you, or the person playing the guitar. This makes the biggest difference out of everything. So before you start recording, make sure your guitar is in tune, you've got nice new strings, you put the microphone in the right place. The most important thing is that you've practiced what you're playing and you can play it properly. Now this might sound obvious, but a lot of people miss this point. They might fiddle around at the end with the EQ or the compression, but they're fiddling around with a track that is bad in the first place because it's not been played properly. To demonstrate that this makes the biggest difference, I'm going to play a piece on the guitar myself, and then I'm going to get my wife, who can't really play the guitar, to try and play the same piece. Thank you for watching. I hope that was useful. Please leave any questions or comments below and hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.